Before we dive into the blissful, shimmering world of dream pop, we have a confession to make. Music labels are sloppy. They blur together, overlap, contradict themselves, and get slapped onto bands that get pissed off about it. But I guess that's part of the fun. The journey from post-punk to dream pop was like one path in an endless forest. Indeed, post-punk has splintered into 17 different directions, so this video is just one trail in the Amazon rainforest of music. So come along with us on this journey, from the minimalistic late 70s post-punk to the hazy and colorful cathedral of dream pop. Before dream pop became this ethereal, otherworldly sound, it started in a much darker and more grounded place. By the late 70s and early 80s, the first wave of punk had burned itself out. Like a once explosive flame settling into embers, some musicians still had something to say, but saying it over 3 chords no longer felt like the right way. So post-punk emerged as a way to go deeper, quieter, and far more introspective. Rather than playing at aggressive speeds, these artists slowed down and leaned into space and atmosphere. Post-punk was colder, more minimalistic, and yet somehow eerily beautiful. Silence became its own instrument. Bass lines stepped forward and became melodic, drums grew sparse and mechanical, and guitars used chorus, flanger, and reverb, creating tones that felt unsettling, distant, and hypnotic. It's the kind of sound that pairs perfectly with a lonely walk down a foggy street at 3 a.m. All of this was shaped by musicians who were drawing from literature, art, and experimental electronic music. The rebellious ethos of punk was still there, but it shifted from volume to mood, less about shouting in favor of something haunting. And as punk transformed into post-punk, the icy atmosphere they created became the earliest blueprint for dream pop. So for each of these eras, I'm gonna go through some albums that contributed to its sound. Marquee Moon, Television, 1977. This album showed that intensity didn't require distortion. Television took punk's energy and stretched it into long, wiry guitar lines that created a sense of openness and nighttime clarity. The way those guitars shimmer and spiral became an early blueprint for dream pop's emphasis on space and atmosphere. To the center of the city where roads meet. Unknown Pleasures, Joy Division, 1979. Peter Hook's melodic bass lines and Martin Hannett's icy production turned emptiness into an emotional landscape. The reverb-drenched drums, cold textures, and haunting vocals made the album feel like it was recorded inside an abandoned warehouse, a mood and spaciousness dream pop would later inherit.
At home, he feels like a tourist.
Entertainment, Gang of Four, 1979. Angular, punchy, and minimalistic, this album taught the entire post-punk world that negative space could be just as expressive as sound. Its sharp rhythms and clipped guitars influenced the idea that restraint, leaving things out, can create mood. Dream pop takes that same principle but softens it.
No blind spots in the leopard's eyes can only help.
Chairs Missing, Wire, 1978. Wire took punk, drained the aggression, and replaced it with eerie stillness and surreal textures. The guitar tones in particular feel slightly out of phase, as if the music is drifting in and out of reality. That experimental sense of atmosphere helped push guitar music toward the dreamier aesthetics that would follow. Real Life Magazine, 1978. Magazine blended art rock sophistication with post-punk tension, creating a dramatic, introspective mood. John McGeoch's shimmering guitar work and Howard Devoto's theatrical delivery set the emotional tone for bands who wanted to explore melancholy in a more atmospheric way, a sentiment that dream pop later softened and romanticized. Something interesting was beginning to happen in the early 80s. The minimalistic sounds of post-punk were shifting towards something deeper and darker. It was more dramatic. even theatrical at times. If post-punk was a walk through an empty city street at 3 a.m., this next era is when the fog becomes thicker and the streetlights begin flickering out. What arose around this time was a more atmospheric post-punk enhanced by themes of Gothic romanticism. Musicians were still embracing space, but they now were decorating it with echoes and emotion. In this Gothic era, the guitars were becoming dreamier. This was through effects like chorus, phaser, and spacious reverb. This reverb played a key role in creating tone and mood, like it was telling a story. The bass lines were becoming increasingly dramatic, and the drums had a ritualistic quality. Then there were the vocals, mysterious, sometimes whispery. As these musical elements blended, the result was something that was equally as beautiful as it was unsettling. This era wasn't confined to just music, it became a whole subculture. In the early 80s, there was the rise of goth clubs and surrealistic films, not to mention a lot of fog machines. The goth subculture was distant from the first wave of punk. It was less angry and more about forming a community for social outcasts. Rather than aggressively rejecting the establishment, the gothic rock era transcended the establishment altogether, and escapism was the next step to dream pop. 17 Seconds, The Cure, 1980. This is basically the entryway into the fog. The Cure stripped everything down and built an entire emotional universe out of silence, echo, and grayscale melancholy. It's minimalistic with a pulse, cold, hypnotic, and quietly devastating. Dream pop later borrowed heavily from this sense of ghostly restraint. Kaleidoscope, Susie and the Banshees, 1980. This was the first full bloom of John McGeoch's shimmering guitar style, bright, eerie, and dreamlike without losing its sharp edges. The album introduced surreal textures and atmospheric layering that pushed post-punk into a more imaginative, spiraling sonic space. Script of the Bridge, The Chameleons, 1983. One of the most emotional and spacious albums of the era, The Chameleons fused post-punk tension with huge, reverberating guitar lines that feel like they're being broadcast from a mountaintop at midnight. This album is practically a missing link between goth romanticism and the sweeping atmosphere of dream pop. Faith, The Cure, 1981. The Cure went even darker and more meditative here. Faith is minimal, cold, and cavernous. A masterclass in how to use space, reverb, and slow-burning emotion. This album deepened the blueprint for atmospheric music that focused more on mood than hooks. Clan of Xymox, 1985. A gorgeous hybrid of goth gloom, post-punk bass lines, and ethereal synths. The band's early sound was drenched in icy reverb and romantic melancholy, creating an emotional atmosphere that directly anticipates dream pop's drifting, escapist qualities. By the mid-80s, post-punk was drifting further into the fog. Something new was blossoming. It was dreamy, weightless, and sounded like something you'd hear in a church with large stained glass windows. The previously metallic guitars were now shimmering with chorus and textures. It created a euphoric feeling, like you were hovering. Engineers cranked up spacious digital and plate reverbs until everything sounded like a memory you vaguely remember having. Vocals became soft, floating, and otherworldly. Instead of guiding the song, singers often became another instrument in the mix, washed in delay, drenched in ambience, barely touching the ground. Drum machines also started creeping in, subtly at first, but becoming increasingly prominent. Cold, hypnotic rhythms blended with the floating guitars, giving this era its signature mix of emotional distance and emotional intensity. It's like the foggy street you are walking through at 3 a.m. led to a portal to something otherworldly. Culturally, escapism was still a major theme in the mid-80s. While normies were hurtling towards the neon lights of commercialism, other artists were creating gorgeous music in the shadows. Art school sensibilities, goth aesthetics, and romanticism were all still major themes of the Ethereal Era. But the desire for escapism and introspection was becoming increasingly gossamer. The music was like something from another dimension, one that was heavenly and orgasmic. Treasure, Cocteau Twins, 1984. The birth of pure, crystalline dream logic. Elizabeth Fraser's vocals float above Robin Guthrie's glowing guitar textures like a language from another world. Every track is drenched in reverb that feels holy, lifting post-punk into something celestial and transcendent. Treasure is basically the point where ethereal stopped being a metaphor and became a genre.
Set me, let me unfold you.
It'll End in Tears, This Mortal Coil, 1984. A collective of 4 AD artists crafting what sounds like a dream pop requiem. Covers become elegies, originals become ghost stories, and everything feels like it's happening in the aftermath of some beautiful tragedy. Slow, floating arrangements and lush ambience make this one of the earliest true emotional templates for dream pop. Spleen and Ideal, Dead Can Dance, 1985. While not dream pop in the modern sense, it shaped the mystical, cathedral-like aesthetics that the genre inherits. Dramatic percussion, medieval-inspired melodies, and cavernous reverb make the entire album feel ancient and sacred. It added grandeur and spiritual weight to the atmospheric world forming around the time. Extractions, Diff Juzz, 1985. A nearly instrumental album that feels like wandering through a dream without ever waking up. Diff Juzz blended post-punk melancholy with ambient sensibilities and shimmering guitar work. The songs drift, swirl, and hang in the air, helping define how immersive instrumental textures could support dream pop's emotional core. Permanent Sleep, Lowlife, 1986. An underrated gem where post-punk gloom dissolves into soft, drifting melancholy. Lowlife carved out a quieter, more romantic corner of the ethereal scene with deep bass, floating guitar washes, and vocals that feel like memories. This record helped bridge the emotional vulnerabilities of goth with the softness dream pop would embrace. By the late 80s, the elements of dream pop finally floated together. The subtle shifts that occurred over the last decade made dream pop distinctly different from post-punk. Music producers were able to use reverb, chorus, and flanger in a way that's akin to a professional sculptor. The bass was warmer and even more melodic. Then there were the drums, which were softer and dialed back. It was like rhythm became a part of the texture, creating more of a pulse than a beat. Vocals hovered throughout the haze, not trying to stand out from the rest of the atmosphere. These are the elements that created dream pop. Culturally, this is the moment alternative music started branching into 100 little subcultures, and dream pop found its niche, the space between indie sensibilities and goth ethereality. Record labels like 4AD and Creation became powerhouses, crafting entire aesthetic worlds around their bands. Pale colors, surreal photography, blurry images, and that art student with the film camera vibe that now defines half the indie scene. Artists were embracing emotion in a new way. Not the raw angst of punk, not the cold tension of post-punk, not the mysticism of goth. Something else. Romantic melancholy, longing, atmosphere, escapism. Emotions that didn't stab, but shimmered. Dream pop began to feel less like a music genre and more like the musical manifestations of mood. Blue Bell Knoll, Cocteau Twins, 1988. This is the moment Cocteau Twins turned dream pop from an experimental aesthetic into something warm, cohesive, and emotionally intoxicating. The guitars glow like stained glass, the drums pulse gently underneath, and Fraser's voice feels like it's suspended mid-air. If Treasure invented the dream, Blue Bell Knoll showed how beautiful the dream could be. Reading, Writing, and Arithmetic, The Sundays, 1990. A bright, clean, emotionally open take on the emerging dream pop sound. Harriet Wheeler's voice floats with a softness that feels almost weightless, while the jangly guitars bring an optimistic shimmer to the genre. This album showed that dream pop didn't need to be foggy or gothic. It could be airy, melodic, and comforting. On Fire, Galaxy 500, 1989. A slow-motion daydream. Galaxy 500 stretched their songs into long, glowing landscapes filled with warm bass lines, gentle percussion, and vocals that feel fragile in the best way. The band proved that dream pop could be intimate, human, and emotionally raw without losing its sense of atmosphere. '69, Arcane, 1988. The psychedelic, dub-soaked cousin of dream pop. Arcane blew up the genre's boundaries with swirling textures, deep bass vibration, and disorienting vocal layers. '69 sounds like dream pop beamed in from another dimension, and is one of the most influential, forward-thinking releases of the entire late 80s era. The House of Love, The House of Love, 1988. A more guitar-focused, romantic take on the transition, The House of Love balanced chiming textures with emotional vulnerability, creating songs that felt equal parts dreamlike and grounded. Their shimmering sound and melodic melancholia helped dream pop merge with the glowing alternative and indie scenes. Since the dawn of the 21st century, dream pop has reimagined, digitized, and influenced the world of indie music. At the end of the day, however, the same elements remain: the soft vocals, lush textures, and reverb. In many of the modern dream pop groups, the tools have changed. Modern dream pop leans heavily into studio experimentation, digital synths, shimmering pads, and guitar processing that would make 1980s producers faint with excitement. A producer in their bedroom can now create a cathedral of sound on their laptop. As software has become more affordable, this has made dream pop more accessible than ever before and has opened the door to all sorts of innovations. It has blended with shoegaze, ambient pop, and synthwave. Many of the modern dream pop releases are more intimate than ever before, giving a staring at your bedroom ceiling at 2 a.m. sort of vibe. Dream pop can be heard everywhere. Indie films, playlists, TikTok, and the melancholic corners of the internet. It's a whole aesthetic, an inspiration to a new generation of indie fans. Dream pop lives in the way people dress, the photographs they take, and presence online. There's a rare appeal across generations. The older fans can hear the echoes of Cocteau Twins and the Sundays in new dream pop releases. The younger listeners hear something comforting, nostalgic, and occasionally cinematic. Lesser Matters, The Radio Department, 2003. Dream pop's rebirth moment. Lesser Matters sounds like it was recorded through a sheet of cold morning light, hazy drums, muted synths, and vocals that feel half whispered, half remembered. The Radio Department brought dream pop into the 2000s with a lo-fi tenderness that still feels timeless. Their blend of melancholy and warmth became the emotional blueprint for modern indie dream pop.
If you built yourself a man, you know just what to.
Bloom, Beach House, 2012. One of the most defining dream pop albums of the modern era, Victoria Legrand's voice drifts like velvet fog over hypnotic drum loops and glowing synth pads. Bloom expanded the genre into something cinematic and widescreen, proving dream pop could be emotionally rich, sophisticated, and almost mythic in scale. The album is the reason so many younger artists even know what dream pop is. Untourable album, Men I Trust 2021. A soft, nocturnal take on dream pop, crafted entirely in bedrooms and small spaces. Men I Trust use delicate bass lines, gentle guitar flourishes, and intimacy as their main instruments. The result is music that feels like a late-night confession whispered over warm analog tape. The modern bedroom pop movement owes a surprising amount to this aesthetic. Preacher's Daughter, Ethel Cain, 2022. A modern Gothic dream pop landmark, Ethel Cain blends slow-burning reverb, Americana melancholy, and dreamlike ambience into something cinematic, spiritual, and deeply emotional. This album proved dream pop could evolve into narrative-driven, genre-bending epics without losing its hazy, floating soul. Titanic Rising, Wise Blood, 2019. Not pure dream pop, but absolutely part of its modern DNA. Titanic Rising is lush, nostalgic, and bathed in warm, glowing textures that feel suspended in air. Wise Blood channels classic songwriting through dream pop's soft-focus atmosphere, creating music that feels like a vintage photograph brought back to life. It's the bridge between chamber pop and dream pop's modern emotional sensibility. When you travel the journey from post-punk to dream pop, it feels like a shadow slowly turning into light. Black and white morphing into vibrant colors. Even if it's only one branch on the post-punk tree, it keeps growing and haunting us beautifully along the way. Stay dreamy, everyone.